of Fredericksburg. In lieu of an invocation this evening, I would like to ask for a moment of silence in memory of all those who died on September 11th, 2011 in that terrible tragedy, and to our brave first responders and survivors who are still suffering the effects of that tragedy. So if we could remain silent for a moment. Thank you very much. Now could we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Officer Worley, thank you for being with us this evening. We have several presentations tonight, but the first one I'm sure will be of great interest to everyone. I will call upon our Captain, our Deputy Emergency Management Coordinator, Victor Podbielski. Hey, thank you, Ski.
I'm used to it. Madam Mayor, council members, I'm here to talk to you a little bit about Hurricane Florence. Starting on Sunday, we started with our conference calls with our partners in the state regarding anticipated impacts for Hurricane Florence. It started off being very interesting with the number of impact scenarios that were presented that day, which got us really thinking about the severity of the storm and how it was going to affect the city. And on Monday morning when we came to work, we met with a lot of city staff to start addressing some of the concerns and to present the scenarios that were given to us. Over the few days, we've been having additional conference calls in which we've gone over the scenarios of what is being presented now. As the forecast starts to narrow, as the time frame begins to shrink and the storm gets closer to inland, we start to identify how severe the actual impact is going to be. And it appears at this time, that it's improving for the city of Fredericksburg. So as of today's conference call, we received word that it looked like the storm was going to start keeping a little further west and start turning maybe to the south in North Carolina rather than directly come into the Commonwealth of Virginia. However, even though that information wasn't completely alleviating all the catastrophic possible consequences, it appeared as though most of the hurricane-related winds and things like that would be a minimal impact. However, river flooding was major concern because of the amount of water they were going to send to the watershed. Now, on the screen, what I put, this is the forecast from that 11:30 call that we had. At 5 o'clock, I received an updated briefing from the National Weather Service, which actually shows the storm continuing to progress, and it appears like their prediction is anticipating it to be a little more rapid. But the one thing that I like about the 5 o'clock briefing that improves for the city of Fredericksburg, from our briefing at 1:30, they spoke that we could see 10 to 15 inches of rain in our watershed. They said with that rain in our watershed, we could anticipate seeing a flood much larger than the one that we saw on June 23rd of this year, which was the 25-footer that impacted downtown. The original graphic, this is not the original. The original graphic pretty much showed the entire state in red, which was at 10 to 15 inches. This graphic as of 5 o'clock shows the city of Fredericksburg in our area in the 4 to 6 inch range for rainfall. And as you can notice, our watershed is also starting to shift to that 4 to 6 or 6 to 10 inches. So this is a positive improvement for us because a lot of the impacts they anticipated us to have are not necessarily from the wind of the storm, not the direct rainfall impact to the city of Fredericksburg, but to the rainfall that's in the watershed. So positive news, we have another conference call at 11:30 tomorrow. I'm hoping that this condition will continue to improve for us, even though I feel for our neighbors to the south and those that are going to be impacted, but for the city of Fredericksburg, it looks like it's starting to improve for us. We still have 3 to 4 days out for the storm, and as we all know, weather forecasting can go the other way, and as things change, we could see where conditions turn for the worse for the city when it comes to predictions. But we're seeing positive outlook as it stands as of 5 o'clock. And like I said, on Sunday, it was, oh my goodness, the world's gonna end, to, okay, it's gonna be bad, to, okay, it's just river flooding, to, we may be okay. Now, we're not completely out of the dark with this, but it seems that conditions are improving. So city departments, we've been meeting with the city departments. We had a complete and total meeting with most of the department heads on Monday. Most of the department heads on Monday, where we presented everything, talked about FEMA documentation, answered questions, started preparation. Departments have been preparing to augment staffing in the evening time and throughout the weekend in preparation for the response to the storm. Everybody from Public Works to Parks and Recs to Department of Social Services, Police Department, Fire Department, they've all been working on this process, as well as many other city departments. We've been sending out briefings, and tomorrow we plan on having another meeting with all the city department heads that are going to be impacted to make further preparations. Some of the things that have been discussed is we've met with economic development to talk about the downtown business owners and provide information to be passed out to them. We've pushed out press releases on being ready and prepared for storms. We've pushed out a press release about the declaration of emergency in preparation for the storm, which opens us up to look at other avenues of services if we do get impacted. We're prepping other press releases in preparation for other things to possibly take place. We've been talking about possibly needing shelters. We've been talking about getting the Emergency Operations Center ready, possible staffing of the Emergency Operations Center and level. All of those things are being discussed in preparation to support the citizens of Fredericksburg in our mission to serve. So as the forecast continues to develop, we'll determine what the best level of activation is as the storm progresses. If it continues to improve, less will be needed because it'll hopefully start returning to a normal day's operation. But whatever is necessary, we're working to prepare for that, all contingents.
Thank you. Mr. Burrity, did you want to add to that?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of council. I do want to thank public safety officials here in the city for collaborating with various departments as highlighted by Victor. Obviously, we are ready and preparing for the worst case scenario. It does, again, sound as if it is improving a bit, but we'll stay tuned and stay focused on worst case scenarios. I do have before you a blue-sheeted declaration of local emergency. I did enact this yesterday, and I do ask for council's concurrence of that action tonight. In fact, if you could consider doing that now, that'd be perfectly appropriate. Happy to answer any questions. That
would be in the form of a resolution. Are there any questions from the council? In which case, we need to pass a resolution.
I move approval of the resolution. Oh.
Second. Right. Thank you. And this is a declaration of local emergency for Hurricane Florence. All right. There's no further discussion. Please cast your votes.
Motion passes 6-0.
Well, thank you very much. We appreciate everyone's efforts on this, and we appreciate you keeping us and keeping the citizens informed. And there will be alerts for those who've signed up to the alert system as needed, and information on our website as well, correct?
Correct, and we're encouraging everybody, sign up for Fredericksburg Alert.
Yes.
That'll be the first place that we send things to. And pay attention to social media and the website and the media.
Thank you.
Ma'am. Have a good evening.
Thank you. We welcome tonight Mr. Lindley Kirkland, Chairman of the Authority, the Stafford Airport Authority, and Dave Ellis, the Vice Chair.
Dave is serving as our vice chair, but he's not here tonight. In his stead, I have
I
Mr.
see
Hamilton
Mr.
Palmer.
I was about to say it, and I see Mr.
Past
Hamilton
chairman.
Palmer.
Yes,
Good.
ma'am. Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. Thank you for the opportunity to come and speak on behalf of the Stafford Regional Airport. As you said, I have the honor of serving as the chairman for this term, and Mr. Hamilton Palmer is our past chairman, so he has been a good mentor and has helped keep us straight as we go through. I want to talk very briefly about some of the activities going on at the airport. We've updated our mission and our vision statement. Give you a little background just to bring some of the members of the council up to speed on where we are and the history of the airport, and then talk about some of the exciting new things going on at the airport. As many of you know, we have worked very closely with the University of Mary Washington Masters of Business Administration program over the last several months and have updated our mission statement and our vision statement for the airport. And we've really done that with an eye to being more involved in the community and more of service to the community. And that's highlighted in our mission statement and our vision statement. But we certainly want to continue to be the magnet for aviation activity in Northern Virginia, and we're working to that effect. Just by way of a little bit of update here, the Stafford Regional Airport Authority, which is an independent governing body for the airport, is comprised of members from 3 municipalities: the Stafford County, Prince William County, and the city of Fredericksburg. Myself, Mr. Shalaby, Mr. Sharpenberg, and Mr. Eves all represent Stafford County. Mr. Ellis and Mr. Arnez represent Prince William County on that authority, and the city of Fredericksburg is ably represented by Mr. Hamilton Palmer. Just a short history of the world here with regard to the airport. The Stafford Regional Airport was identified back in 1972 as the FAA sort of identified a need for an airport to be located in the Northern Virginia area to replace several of the airports that had closed, like Woodbridge and others. The planning began in earnest, looking for a site in the 1977 timeframe, with the feasibility studies and things completed in the 92 timeframe. Construction began in 97, and the airport was opened in December of 2001. And when we opened, you might recall, it was literally just the runway, the taxiway, and a small ramp area. And we had just a trailer that was operating as our fixed base operation and our pilot's lounge. We've done a lot of improvements since then. We incorporated new T hangars in the 2004 timeframe, some corporate hangars 2005. The new terminal building, which the city of Fredericksburg was very much a part of, opened in 2014. And then we are now in the process of beginning to expand the runway 1,000 feet additional runway length beginning this year, and that project should take us into the 2020 timeframe. Also, just to give you a sense of some of the status, if you will, for the Stafford Regional Airport. We are a general aviation airport, which very simply means we don't have commercial air service at the airport. So that's sort of the basic definition of a general aviation airport. Also, we are designated in a special category called a reliever airport by the FAA and the Secretary of Transportation. And what that means is that we, in times of emergency, we can relieve congestion at some of the larger commercial airports, Reagan, Dulles, and Richmond. And along with that comes some responsibilities that we have to be able to provide a certain level of service. With that responsibility comes a little bit of advance preferential treatment, if you will, for funding from the FAA to make sure that we ensure that we have those services available to the airport. So we are both a general aviation airport and a designated reliever airport. Currently, we have about 70 based aircraft there. That fluctuates sort of on a month-to-month basis, but about 70 airplanes. We conduct about 27,000 takeoffs and landings annually at this time, which is about 20% of our design capacity. We're capable of many, many more operations than we have at present. The Virginia Department of Aviation conducts an economic impact survey on a routine basis. They did it in 2007, again in 2010, and then another study was just completed in 2017, which says that the Stafford Regional Airport generates about $23.3 million in annual economic activity in the catchment area. And the catchment area for this study is defined as Stafford County, Spotsylvania County, Prince William County, and the city of Fredericksburg. So our region enjoys about a $23.5 million annual economic activity benefit from the activities generated at the Stafford Regional Airport. Some of that is in direct and indirect jobs with about $8 million in salary, and that puts us about number 6 within the Commonwealth for general aviation airports. You see the charts at the bottom are just an indication of our fuel sales continue to be robust, as well as our hangar occupancy rates. We're essentially full up of all the hangars that we have completed at the airport to date. A lot of the businesses, you might ask, well, who is generating that economic activity? Well, I would just say it's companies like the Silver Companies, Kohl's, Target, Walmart. Many other corporate operators use the Stafford Regional Airport when they come to Stafford and Fredericksburg to do business here in this area, because it provides them ready access without having to go through the hassle of driving down from DC or from Dulles and those types of things. And many of those corporate operators have private aircraft that they operate from a corporate perspective that utilize the Stafford Regional Airport very frequently. So we're happy to provide that service to them. Currently, the city of Fredericksburg, as I indicated on the chart earlier, you have one of the 7 representatives on the Stafford Regional Airport Authority. Along with that, you guys have been very generous in providing us an annual stipend of about $21,500. That is 1/7 of our total municipality stipend of $150,000 total from the 3 municipalities. And so that typically goes to pay for things like personnel, administration costs. We cannot by law use that for capital projects, but we do use that to offset some of the costs that we have for personnel and administration. One of the other advantages that you get from your contribution to the Stafford Regional Airport is as we look at emergency preparedness for this upcoming hurricane, our airports serve as vital transportation and emergency services links in those types of recovery efforts and relief efforts. So Stafford Regional Airport is already engaged with the Virginia Department of Emergency Management and the Virginia Department of Aviation, looking at plans and contingencies for post-hurricane operations here. The project I really want to talk about is what's happening going forward here at the airport. Right now we have a runway, single runway 1533, that's a 5,000-foot runway that we operate now. We're going to extend that by 1,000 feet to 6,000 feet. Our airport master plan identified that need back in 2013. The FAA approved it as part of our airport layout plan. We have been in the process of doing the environmental assessment to look at all the impacts of that construction, and that was just approved and finalized in May of 2018. So we're just complete with that process. We are right now we've received the grant money, and we are just now starting the permitting and mitigation process and finalizing the design of the airport and the construction thereof. We had a scoping meeting with the Department of Aviation and the FAA back in April, and again, we just received the grant monies and are moving out with the contracts for the permitting, mitigation, and the final design. That construction will start in the fall of 2020. You'll probably see preparatory activities between now and then, but first dirt will probably move in the fall of 2020 to complete the project by the fall of 2022. It's about a $12 million project overall that we have scoped out in this extension. This is just a detailed drawing of the land that we had acquired through a swap with the Economic Development Authority a couple of years ago, but we own the land. We have it in-house as airport property now, and so no other land will need to be procured to do this particular project. a little bit more detailed look. This is, if you think about it, the end of the runway that we're talking about is the one opposite of I-95. When you travel down I-95, you come across the southern end of the runway. This will be on the opposite end, so the construction will be on that particular end of the runway. What will that do for us? Well, it will allow us to better serve the existing and the future airport customers by providing a runway that will allow aircraft to more safely operate up to their full range and or weight capability. What does that mean exactly? Well, we have many corporate operators that come in now, and because of the 5,000 foot of runway, they can't take full fuel or load as many passengers as they would like and still make it to the West Coast or across the pond to European destinations. With the additional 1,000 feet of runway, that will open that up and allow them to take the additional weight in fuel or passengers to make those now nonstop destinations. Additionally, many corporate operators in their operational specification specify that they won't allow their aircraft to operate on runways less than 6,000 feet. So this should open us up to many, many more corporate operators that then won't have an insurance restriction or an operational restriction to do that. So it will certainly allow us to be much more flexible in the operations that we have. It is not intended to entice larger aircraft or bigger aircraft here to the Stafford Regional Airport. So that's our primary focus over the next couple of years, is that project. We're also engaged with some folks about bringing maintenance to the facility, as well as building additional hangars for our corporate operators and for tenants there at the airport. And so our look, as we look forward, we're looking at developing things in the community, looking at more community outreach events. Our terminal building, a beautiful facility. Many of you have been there, and it is open, and we open it to the public for use, and so it's available, and we use that as a community outreach. We certainly want to increase our traffic count, get more toward our design capacity of the airport, bring in more tenants to base their aircraft here on the field, and looking again at developing and promoting events that enhance the community and our involvement in the community. So subject to that, I'll take any questions you might have.
Thank you. And yes, Councilor Duffy?
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation today. Can you tell us how the runway extension will impact operations and especially economic contributions to the region?
So
What you expect? Yeah.
Sure. What we anticipate happening is, because that will now open up the airport to use by many other corporate operators that currently have restrictions against runways less than 6,000 feet. So that should give many operators the opportunity to come to Stafford as opposed to going to Manassas or Dulles. So those who come to the region to do business that now have to go to Dulles or to Manassas now will be able to come into Stafford. So we'll be able to catch those fees, the fuel sales, all the things that go along with that.
Councilor Devine?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was writing notes as you presented, so I have a couple of questions. One is, when you talk about mitigation, are you talking about wetlands? Are you talking about moving homes or businesses? What's the mitigation?
It's primarily wetlands. We have about 3 different sites that we have wetlands mitigation we have to do. We have a couple of cultural sites that we have to do investigation of, and then potentially move those sites as well. They're very small. I think on the wetlands, we're only looking at about 30 acres or so that are going to have to be mitigated there. But no homes, no structures at all have to be moved or mitigated.
If I can continue. With the 1,000-foot increase in the runway, do you know at ballpark how close that brings you to existing neighborhoods?
I would I'd have to show you on the map. It doesn't put us as close as you might think. Certainly gets us closer, but if you look at the neighborhoods that we have in the vicinity of the airport, most are to the left or to the right of the airport, not in line with the runway or the runway extension. So there are individual homes that are in the path that the runway is directed toward, that we will be closer to those individual homes. But in terms of neighborhoods, and subdivisions. Most of those are not in the direct flight path, the departure path of the runway. So it doesn't bring us, in a sense, closer to those than when we are today.
Okay, and if I could just, one more, I think, just one more. You said it's not intended to attract larger planes, but it could. Is there any noise difference or differential with that? And I guess along with that, are you increasing your hours of use?
So let me answer those in reverse order.
Sorry.
The first question is, does that increase the hours of use? This is a 24-hour facility today. It's not manned 24 hours. We have staff on site in the summer from 7 in the morning to 7 in the evening. But the airport itself is open for 24-hour operations. And we do have a lot of transients that come in middle of the night, land, park their airplane, and off they go. We are a non-towered facility, so we don't have an operational control tower. Airplanes flying in there are under what they call self-control. So they make their own announcements on the radio and provide their own separation when operating in and around the airport. So it is a 24-hour facility now, and will continue to do that. With regard to larger aircraft, we are designed for what they call Group 2C aircraft, which are aircraft up to 70,000 pounds and 79-foot wingspan. And so that is how the weight-bearing capacity of the runway, the width of the taxiways, all of that is designed to that parameter. Now, could a 737 land there? In an emergency case, yes, but it is not designed to operate those types of aircraft on a routine basis. It's mostly the corporate type aircraft, the Gulfstreams, the Learjets, things like that are the largest aircraft that we typically see at the airport. And I forget the third question you had. If you would refresh my memory, please.
I think I asked about noise. Would it
Noise.
would there be,
Yeah.
would it be louder?
It's going to be the same category and class of aircraft that we have today, so essentially no difference in the noise signature that we have than what we have today.
Which I guess I clearly don't know enough about aviation, but so a heavier plane with fuel and passengers wouldn't really be a noise change?
If you look at the design spec and the noise study that has been done, it basically takes the existing noise signature for below the 65 decibel level. That is all contained on the airport property, and by extending the runway only extends that lengthwise, and so the lateral distances, we still contain all of that noise signature on the airport property as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Councilor Graham.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. You mentioned that there is not a control tower at the airport currently, but with the increase in traffic, at what point will it get to where a control tower will be necessary, and then what would be the cost for that kind of capital improvement?
So the FAA has a lot of metrics that they use when they determine whether a facility needs a control tower or not. They're also looking at new things like the virtual control tower, where our facility might be controlled remotely from some other place.
Okay.
The short answer is there is no defined hard number that says at this many operations there will be a control tower installed. So the FAA will continue to look at our operations as we grow, and at some point we'll determine that we in fact need a control tower. When that happens, as with most of our capital projects, we are primarily funded through FAA grants to normally 90% of that, of any funding of, and like this project for the runway extension will be 90% federal, 8% state or Commonwealth, and then 2% of our own airport authority money.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Fry.
Thank you, Mayor Greenlaw. Yeah, thank you for the presentation. And for me, it's real interesting to see this unfold and where you guys are today. I had a bird's eye view for a long time. I was the UPS delivery guy years ago when you guys just had the trailer. Mm-hmm. And I was used to going and seeing the Forbes Street, the private strip across the street, across the road over there. And when I started seeing some of the bigger planes come over there with you guys, I was like, wow. And it was just a trailer over there. And I remember it was a trailer where you guys were and the strip, and it was the helicopter section where like the medical helicopters, and it gave me kind of like a, different perspective on what's going on. Because you always, if you ever hear about a bad accident or somebody had to be flown to, around here you always hear somebody's being flown to Nova, Fairfax. and all of that once there's an accident. And it gave me a bird's eye view of seeing who it is who's actually doing it, and it was guys right there waiting on those calls. So to see the expansion now from what it was, yeah, because when I saw it then, I was like, wow, I used to think nothing's going to be bigger than Shannon Airport, But just to see it now, good work to everybody. I just want to say that.
I appreciate you saying that, Councilman Fry. If you go out on a Tuesday or a Thursday, typically during the week, you'll see 5, 6, 7 business jets, corporate aircraft on the line there. It's, you wouldn't think, but there is a lot of economic activity happening here in the greater Stafford and Fredericksburg area. And a lot of those operators use the Stafford Airport week in and week out. And so we're hoping to catch a few of those and have them base here as we go forward. But we certainly, it has been in very good use, and we hope to continue that.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Kirkland.
Thank you, ma'am.
We also welcome tonight Mr. Curry Roberts, the president of the Fredericksburg Regional Alliance. And I'm sure you can speak to some of those corporate jets. You may have a little something to do with it.
Well, I don't know that I want to take responsibility for all the corporate jets, Mayor. What I was going to say, since the interesting presentations were now out of the way, I can talk about the Fredericksburg Regional Alliance. So I would say we have had a number of inquiries in the last 6 or 8 months about the length of the runway, and that's relatively new. And we have shipped out their release about the extension of the runway, and we actually were talking to a prospect today in Stafford County who wanted information about the lengthening and what the timeline is. So it is a big help to us from an economic development and marketing standpoint, but so are baseball parks. But that wasn't part of the question. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to come and give an update on the Fredericksburg Regional Alliance. I have a PowerPoint, I think. Can you put in a thumb drive? Well, in that case, while she's plugging that in, I would ask you to put down October 24th from 5:30 to 7:30 at Hyatt Place. We'll have our annual meeting. We have sort of a panel, two-speaker panel that I think you all would find interesting. Stephen Jast, who is the CEO of ROI. That's the lead generation firm that we use out of Canada. It's an international firm that we've been using for about 2.5 years, and they'll be explaining how they source prospects for regions. And John Loftus, who is with VDP, and he is their site specialist. So the combination of them between what they're finding in the marketplace and what Virginia has in terms of assets to offer, I think would be an interesting presentation, and I hope you all would join us. Yes, ma'am. 5:30 to 7:30. I also want to say that we enjoy a very good close working relationship both with the city manager and with your economic development office. Bill Freeling and Angela and Amy are just terrific to work with, and we cooperate often on prospects and projects and presentations. Do I have it? It's not that long a presentation, I promise.
Okay, all right.
Take longer to set it
We
up than
believe
it's
you.
going to take for me to go through it, I think.
We believe you. Just gotta hook it up.
Bingo.
There you go.
Some marketing metrics. You all have seen these before. We started presenting them this way about 3 years ago. Year to date, fiscal 18, we finished up on June 30. Most important number up here is actually the pipeline. That shows how many active prospects we are still working from beginning of the year to the end of the year. Slight decline from the end of 17 to 18, but most of that is accounted for. We had a spike in business-to-business work that we were doing with defense and security contractors from Canada and the UK. We made a couple of marketing trips with VDP to security and defense contractor conferences and trade shows. And oftentimes, the international contractors were actually looking for partners in the U.S. So we came back here and consulted with about 60 different defense contractors and security contractors across the region, trying to see if there were business-to-business opportunities between our contractors and some international contractors. We do know to date there have been 3 letters of intent between contractors that have been signed, and we have become a referral point for VEDP in this area. The other regions of Virginia really don't engage in business-to-business introductions. We do it because we view it as an opportunity to do existing industry services to a very important industry in our region. You will also notice we are a public-private partnership. As you all know, we do appreciate your support, but we also continue to grow the number of private sector investors. You'll see there we were up to 45 at the end of fiscal 18. We've actually picked up 2 more. Our annual budget for the coming year is about $700,000, and it is virtually 50-50 between the funding that we receive from the local governments in the region and what we receive from the private sector. This was our marketing calendar for the past year. I'm not going to bore you with all of these, but as you will see, they are within our clusters. Our major clusters are manufacturing, data, cyber, software, shared services and call centers, and then public administration, which again would be part of our defense sector in the region. So you'll notice that all of these sort of flow through those clusters. The calendar for the coming year looks very similar, except it does have one highlight. We'll cover that at the annual meeting, but I thought I would mention it here because it is a little bit unique. We are doing a joint call trip with Arlington to the UK. As many of you all know, there was a lot of cooperation between our region and Arlington when Lidl landed in the United States. The corporate offices ended up in Arlington, but their first U.S. distribution center landed in Spotsylvania County. There was a lead generation firm that has about 20 years of experience working with both regional groups in Virginia as well as the state. And they made a proposal to us. It was a little more expensive than what we wanted to do on our own, but we decided to partner with Arlington. And we'll have about 30 meetings over a 5-day trip to the UK, spread over a variety of industries. But again, looking at businesses who want to establish a presence in the United States, but they also want to manufacture or distribute somewhere, which is what we can compete for. This chart, I'm not sure I've shown this to City Council before. We have used it off and on. This came from a Brookings Institute study on economic development organizations and how they spend their time. The chart on the left is what EDOs, about 450 of them across the country, answered how they spent their time over the prior 10 years, which is about 85 to 90% of their time looking at direct investment or attraction of businesses into an area. When they forecasted where they'd be spending their time going out 10 years, it changes pretty dramatically. We took the chart back, or brought it back here about 2 years ago, and looked at how we spend our own time. We tracked our own time for about 6 months, and this is how we spend our time. About 60% is actually spent on business attraction, but we also spend a lot of time on strength and capacity. Many of you remember the commuter skills study that was done. We continue to work with the Center for Business Research at the University of Mary Washington that we helped stand up with the Chamber and the university. We are working on and continue to work on business-ready sites. We actually have 5 site characterization studies that we're doing on behalf of 2 of the local governments in the region now. Innovation and entrepreneurship, I mentioned a little bit about B2B, but we also have been working with 2 startups, one a defense-related startup, one not. I would call it more recreational. And we also are reaching more into CIT, especially to help with tech transfer initiatives from the bases in the region. A little bit more on capacity building. I'm not going to cover all of these, but one thing I would, as I mentioned, we had John Loftus, or we have John Loftus coming to speak in October. There are 23 certified business-ready sites of 100 acres or more in all of Virginia. We have none in our region. We have 2 what we would consider pad-ready sites in the region for a grand total of 38 acres. Now, if I were to put a slide up here for North Carolina, they have about 110. South Carolina has about 80. So we have some real product development issues, not simply in our region. That You know, the good news is if we can develop some product, that'll make us very competitive within the state, especially given our location. But when you compare us to states to the southeast, they have continued to be very aggressive at site development. The mayor actually asked me to put this in here. This goes back, and I know Mr. Withers has seen this, and Mr. Kelly has seen this. There's been quite a bit of discussion across the region at GWRC and at FAMPO about other things that we could do to chip away at the 63,000 now commuters that we have. How do you attract more industry here? And the reality is we're a pretty good regional organization and we've got pretty strong local economic development folks, but we're not going to attract 63,000 jobs anytime in the near future. You have to take a much broader view of economic development. One thing about and the reason for that is the growth of our labor force, which is the default for population, continues to grow at about 1.9% a year. Yet we only create jobs at about 1.7% a year. So if you look out to 2032, the outcommute is actually going to be in the 70,000s instead of the 63,000. Now, there are a lot of variables in here. This was just rough math. Now, that assumes commuting patterns remain the same.
Yeah.
That assumes that all the jobs are still going to be up north and everyone's going to commute to them. I don't know that that's necessarily the case. But we were asked what would be the components if you were to look at a more regional approach of how to chip away at the number of outcommuters that we have. And you have to take a very broad view. It's not just about business attraction. You have to look at workforce and workforce development, and that goes all the way to the primary and secondary schools. You have to look at what your existing industries are doing to generate jobs within the region. You have to look at other alternatives, at entrepreneurship, at tech transfer. We only really deal with the left-hand side of this box. So there needs to be a lot of other voices at the table talking about regional economic development than just us. There has to be a much broader view of how to address some of those issues. So with that, Mayor, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions for Mr. Roberts? I'd be curious to know regarding data center sites.
Yes, ma'am.
What does it take to have a data center site ready?
Well, not all data centers are the same.
Right, yeah, I realize
Okay, I
that.
mean, you can
but
have
made
one that
much too
wants-
general a question, yeah.
You know, most of what we hear today, they're looking for campuses. Campuses would be a number of buildings that would total 500 to 1 million square feet. Mm-hmm. Some of them are higher users of water than others. It depends on what they do on cooling. Mm-hmm. But primarily access to fiber, so proximity to the interstate, because you've only got so much distance to run dark fiber and it becomes cost prohibitive. And then it's 50 megawatts of power as a minimum. Mm-hmm. So proximity to a transmission line, and they are very sensitive to where they locate to ensure that the transmission lines can upgrade their service without impacting residential areas. So it really does narrow down very quickly. We went through a process with both Dominion and Rappahannock about 2.5 years ago, identifying sites across the region. And we actually started with an inventory of 60 sites that in theory you could get power to without impacting residential areas, and these were 100 acres or more. By the time we got through, winnowing down the other components that were required, we ended up with about 20 sites. So it's and again, it can vary. It can vary between the type of user. Mm-hmm. But that's a standard rule of thumb.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Withers?
I take it you can't put your slide back up, that last slide back up, because I think you just...
Not now, unless she downloaded it.
Did you download it? Could you put the last slide back up, please?
You mean the investor slide or the economic
The one,
development? The strategic plan?
the
Yeah,
four.
okay, that would be,
the 4 different categories. You said you control the one on the left.
no, I said I impact.
I'm not, sorry, right. Sometime I get words confused.
The one that it had transportation
That's
on
okay.
the
That's
right.
okay. You don't need to get it back up.
Transportation on the right.
Yeah, I guess my question, in the second column, you had schools,
Workforce.
UVA and, University of
Mary
Mary
Washington.
Washington and others. I guess that's something that we could get involved with the school a portion of that. Would that be fair to
Oh,
say?
absolutely, especially on the local school side. We do work very closely with both the University of Mary Washington and Germanna on workforce-related issues. And they're aware that this discussion is going on with GWRC. And
How do we stack up with workforce
Actually, that's one thing that we do have with the out-commuters. You've got areas of the state who have much better sites than we do and no workforce. We do have folks who would like to get off the road. We do have engines in the community turning out new graduates every year between the public school system, the private schools that are in the region, Germanna and UMW. And they are turning out people in skill sets that we need, especially when you get to things like data centers, cybersecurity, and those areas.
So, ma'am, just one follow-up. So I guess you worked with our city manager and administrators and candidates to kind of try to match up workforce with what prospective businesses that may be coming in?
We
And
do
how to
provide,
improve
yes,
that
sir.
maybe?
And we do provide feedback. We also, we've got Unidyne, which is an employer who moved here from Prince William. It's a manufacturer that's in off Shannon Drive. They already are using FredCat, the Germanna facility, to do their training in certain skill areas. And this is very high-end manufacturing. It's stainless steel welding and forming. They are in discussions with Germanna on how to do an apprenticeship program, which there has not been an apprenticeship program in welding in this area in quite some time.
Well, Kerry, thank you for all you do. I think you do a lot for the region, and we all appreciate that. So
Thank you.
So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Woodard.
Yes, Council Graham.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think on that same slide that Mr. Withers was referencing, there was something about the. No, it's
The
okay. It's
wonderful-
very
the wonderful
specific.
disappearing slide
No,
over
no,
here,
it's
so-
it's totally fine. You mentioned skiffs in there specifically.
I didn't, but go ahead.
No, well, no,
Yeah,
it's
space is mentioned here.
Right. It's mentioned in the infrastructure. Is that something that is going to be? Is that part of the plan to try to build them, or that they could be hoteled in, like hoteling skiffs? I mean, what I mean, it's an interesting idea. I just want to know more about it, because once I saw that, and then the telecommute options, that's just something that speaks to me personally.
Well, there are, as you know, it's almost like shared workspace,
Right.
except it's skiffed and secured.
Mm-hmm.
And there are developers across the country who are developing those just as you would develop shared workspace, except the security level is significantly higher.
Exactly.
And we have been in discussions with two of those developers who have visited the region. One of them actually already serves some contractors in the Quantico area, which is what interested them in talking to us, and we have been showing them a couple of buildings in the region. In the past, when those types of developers have come, we really haven't had a building of any size. And we're going to have to convert something to work for this anyway, as you know, to get it through the certification process. But they've been offered two floors within existing buildings, and that's more difficult, frankly, from a security standpoint.
You just need the whole building.
You do. It actually makes it easier. But the interest has jumped pretty dramatically in the last 12 months on that, and that is a goal of ours, of trying to attract one of those developers.
Great. Thank you.
Very well.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Roberts. We really appreciate the good work of the FRA. It's an enormous asset that we can have this regional authority, and we really appreciate all who serve on it. I actually represent the council, but Mr. Vreeling and Angela Freeman are present also at the meetings.
Yes, ma'am.
So there's constant contact as far as the city is concerned with the organization. And you have developed a lot more private investment, which shows a great deal of confidence, I think, as well.
Thank you.
So, thank you.
Thank you all for your support.
We have one public hearing tonight. Madam Clerk, will you please read item 5A?
soliciting public comments on the implementation of 2017-2018 Community Development Block Grant Programs for the Consolidated Annual Performance and Evaluation Report.
I'll call on Susanna Finn.
Good evening. So tonight we have the public hearing for the CAPER, much easier to say. The CAPER is the annual look at the city's progress on the goals established in the 2015 Consolidated Plan for the city's HUD Community Development Block Grant, CDBG program. Tonight, the goal of the public hearing is to receive input from the community specifically on how the annual Community Development Block Grant entitlement was allocated this past fiscal year, that's 2017-2018. Just as a quick summary, this year the funds were allocated to 4 nonprofit organizations that were able to offer 23 families emergency rental and mortgage assistance to prevent eviction and foreclosure, legal services to 172 households to represent them in cases of eviction and educate them on landlord-tenant law, offer 123 households health counseling, testing, and education about HIV and AIDS, and 369 elderly city residents received ongoing food assistance. These funds also assisted with repairs to 7 dwellings, dealing with electrical, plumbing, and roofing emergencies, and 3 additional homes for modifications for architectural barriers, making the homes more accessible and allowing elderly residents to remain in their homes. In all, roughly $189,000 of grant funding served 763 households this year. Staff invited the city's neighborhood and civic groups through direct mail to provide input into the development of this CAPER. A summary of the CAPER was provided in the August 28th edition of the Freelance Star, along with an announcement that the draft plan would be available for review in City Hall, on the city's website, and at the library. This announcement opened a public comment period that will officially end tomorrow. Any comments received throughout the public comment period up until tomorrow, as well as any comments received tonight, will be incorporated into the draft CAPER. A final version will be brought back to you for your consent to send to HUD at your 25th meeting of September, and then we will forward that on to HUD. Happy to take any questions.
Are there any questions for Ms. Finn? Councilor Fry?
Thank you, Mayor Greenlaw. No questions, just a comment, as always, when this hits the table. Everything that Mrs. Finn is saying is so true and plus some. And it's interesting to see how I always sit here and say that Mrs. Finn is like the go-to person for all of this that happens. But behind the scenes, what she does is amazing to me. So every chance I get, I'm going to say it because I mean, sometimes we had to pull in the fire department, the police department, public works, all kinds of things happen when folks have needs at home. And a lot of times it's during bad weather. We had an incident last year. It was in the winter, and it's just all kinds of things that happen. And just the give back to the community is like huge. So I'm gonna say this publicly. Ms. Finn knows it. I give her name and number out so much, it's ridiculous. But every time with the follow up, it's always how helpful Mrs. Finn was, and saving people from a lot of stress and headache, and like I said, a lot of elderly folks who don't know what the resources are. It's just like, and I don't know all the answers, but I quickly give up Mrs. Finn's name and number.
I'm not always able to assist, but I try to connect people to the best services I can.
Yeah. You may not assist directly, but the resources are. So, like I said, every time this hits the table, I'm going to say the same thing. So, thank you, Mayor Greenlaw.
Well, I will echo Mr. Fry on that. I've served on that committee as he does now, but I will tell you that in this particular community development block grant, which the city implements, which Ms. Finn, our community resource officer, implements, is without a doubt the best use of the taxpayers' money you can imagine. It goes a long way, partly because Ms. Finn works closely with the vendors and the businessmen in the community who the providers of services to assist these people, but tell me again, it's how many $1,000 helped? It was 163
189,000 last year.
and 163 households?
763.
700,
With major construction to 10, which is a big deal to me. A lot
yes.
of leaking roofs that are no longer leaking.
A lot of
especially
leaking
now.
roofs, a lot of plumbing that doesn't work, a lot of homes that are not accessible for, the individuals who are elderly. We have a lot of people in this community living on less than $30,000 a year. Try that. So it's quite remarkable what's done, and Ms. Finn does do a wonderful job of serving those people. But this is your tax dollars at work going a long way. So you can be proud of that. So thank you. Any further comment? Yeah, Mr. Barini, did you say? Okay. Oh, this is a public hearing, I just was reminded. Oh, that's what everybody was trying to tell me. Sorry about that. This is a public hearing. The public gets to speak as well. If you would like to speak, please approach the podium. You have 5 minutes. Okay, then we will call the public hearing closed.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. We have no one signed up to speak tonight for our comments from the public portion of the meeting. Does any counselor wish to add anything to the council agenda? In that case, we will move forward to the consent agenda. Would anyone like to remove something? Councilor Duffy?
I would just like to make a disclosure regarding item 8A. It involves adjustments to the school fund, school grants fund, because I am assistant principal at James Monroe High School, but I can participate in this fairly objectively and in the public interest.
Thank you. Councilor Fry?
Thank you, Mayor Greenlaw, and thank you, Dr. Duffy, for starting this one up here. I also would like to read my disclosure. My spouse is an employee of the Fredericksburg Public School System. I'm able to participate in the transaction fairly objectively and in the public interest. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, move approval of the consent agenda.
Second.
Please cast your votes.
Motion passes 6-0.
All right, we have 5 sets of minutes before us: June 12th, June 26th, July 10th, August 28th, and August 28th, regular session. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes?
Madam Mayor, move approval of the minutes as submitted.
Second.
Please cast your votes.
Motion passes 6-0.
Thank you. City Manager's agenda, item 10A is the preliminary year-end financial report for fiscal year 2018. I will call upon Ms. Shugart.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and members of the council. Before you tonight are the preliminary fiscal year 18 year-end results. The auditors are currently on site, so this information is still considered unaudited. Year-end revenues for the general fund are projected to be $93.7 million, which is a 4.3% increase over fiscal year 17. I will discuss a few of the major revenue sources, which include real estate at $31.6 million, personal property $8.8 million, sales tax $11.5 million, meals tax $11.8 million, and all of these revenue sources showed positive growth over fiscal year 17. These are the larger revenue sources, and there is a table of some of the smaller revenue sources in the memo that was provided. On the expenditure side, the expenditures are projected to be $92.1 million. This is a slight increase over fiscal year 17. The amount remaining in the contingency is approximately $209,000. This does show the continued work of all of the departments and their great stewardship of the budget with this expenditure level. So with that being said, these favorable results of the expenditures and revenues, the projected addition to fund balance is approximately $1.58 million. This does not include the outstanding encumbrances or considerations of additional commitments. So overall, the city had a great year financially Mark does have some additional context he would like to add, but I'd first ask if there's any questions.
Any questions of Ms. Sugar? Mr. Whitley?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of council. Just to reach back and first of all, I want to thank Ms. Shugart and her staff for helping prepare that report and their great role in their stewardship of the city's resources. They do a fantastic job in finance. Just to add a little bit of context, it has been a good year for us financially. We were able to add a small amount to the general fund balance at the close of the year, and that's the first time we've been able to do that since fiscal 15. Every year we do, we always make our budget in terms of the revenues, and we spend less than we budget in terms of expenditures, but we have been using a little bit of fund balance over the past couple of years as we complete capital projects and one-time expenditures. And this year we continue to do that, but the level of growth in the revenues and the containment of expenditures enable us to end the year with a positive balance. And that will be good as we prepare for the fall bond issue, which Ms. Jett and we've got a team working very hard on that. The rating agencies will be coming to see us next month, and we'll be bringing before council at several points along the way items like ordinance, public hearings, and things like that. We're estimating about right now about $16 million of bonds to issue this fall. So having a positive result at the end of the year will help us with our rating agency reviews, and we've got a team working hard on that and coming forward for your review in October and November. And we'll be bringing forward to the next council meeting some recommendations in terms of assignments to fund balance and assisting with carryovers and other future needs at the close of, as of the close of this year, to sort of wrap up, if you will, of fiscal 18. But it was a good year, and I'm happy to answer any questions council may have.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Whitley? It's always good to get a good financial report, and I appreciate the staff's diligence in managing expenses. It's not just revenues coming in, it's expenses not going out. So, appreciate it very much. Item 10B is a first read item amending regulations regarding entry into and watercraft on the city canal and the Cosi Pond. I call on Mr. King.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of council. As you may recall, at a recent work session, we brought this item to council just to give you a briefing and a heads up that we will be bringing this to you at a regular session. This item is up for a first read approval this evening. I do want to remind or to give credit due to the folks who worked on this. This was a collaborative process between the Public Works Department and the City Attorney's Office. I have Diane Byer, our Assistant Public Works Director, here this evening, and Rob Ekstrom, who's our Assistant City Attorney this evening. Both have worked on this fairly minor change to the to our city code that pertains to the canal and prohibitions that relate to that. I do want to give a disclaimer from this earlier in the meeting where we had a report on our Hurricane Florence preparations. There's, someone may say that someone may do just about anything to prove a point or to justify a point. I do want to disclaim that the City Public Works Department had nothing to do with conjuring up a hurricane just to prove a point that our canal is a significant stormwater feature in the city. Being that it is, we did lower the canal a couple of feet today because it does receive a fair amount of stormwater from the city. So it is an important feature of our stormwater system, and because of that, again, we have some things that we want to clarify as far as usage of the canal. So with that, I'd like to introduce our Assistant Director of Public Works, Diane Byer.
Good evening, councilors, Madam Mayor. The recommended code change, you can see here, it's very minor. The code language that we're recommending be changed is in red. And what we're adding to the code is that there would be no boats paddling, wading, or otherwise entering the canal or Causey Pond for any reason unless there was explicit written permission from the city. The other change is number 3 at the bottom, and that is just no fishing in the canal. There are a number of reasons for these changes. One of them is that there are, as you can see in the picture, the sides of the canal are very steep. They're susceptible to erosion along the canal length. We have a lot of vines and vegetation that would impede people getting into the canal safely without tripping or liability issues. It would also be difficult entry for rescue operations if we needed to do that. We have an aeration system that you can see in the picture there that we use to keep the water moving and to keep dissolved oxygen levels higher in the canal, because we do have wildlife. We do have a number of fish species and other wildlife that call the canal home. So we do that to help the water quality in the canal system. The aeration system is made up of small, very small pipes, and they're very susceptible. They're placed along the bottom of the canal. There is a pipe along the side that then feeds the slotted pipe that you see in the middle of the picture there. And all of those pipes are very kind of fragile for such a large system. They're not very able to handle, say, people stepping on them or people hooking them with fish hooks or being hooked by paddles or knocked into or that sort of thing. We've done a lot of repairs to the aeration system in the last year. And in 2017, we spent about $9,000, which included technicians coming in from the company who actually patented this system. They did some replacement and some fixing of the aeration system, and I had them train our city employees so that we were able to go and fix minor issues on our own when that need occurs. But you can see here, this is the pipe that's along the side of the canal that then feeds, you'll see, oh, it disappears, I forgot about that. Down here in this bottom corner, you'll see the little pipe that goes out to one of the center pipes that then feeds the slotted air system that you see in the picture. So you can see how small it is and how susceptible it would be. We also have a duckweed and water meal population in the canal. It's a natural population, but probably not desirable as far as wanting to fish or swim, we don't want that traveling to another body of water either, through people getting in it with boats or other conveyances. The liability for right now we do not water test. We have talked about it, and I would like to start water testing, get a baseline so that we see what we're dealing with as far as nutrients and what we have in the canal so that we can go forward in a better way as far as management. But at this present moment, we do not have those tests, so the waterborne contaminants in the waterway, it's an unknown factor. It is a closed pond-like system now that it's been disconnected from the river. So those are issues that we would worry about as far as liability and personal safety. We do have an MOU that I'm working on. It's nearly finished. Brian Hoffman and I have been working on it. Brian Hoffman is with Front of the Rappahannock, and they would be our conveyance as far as having people sign up for cleanups in the canal or in Causey Pond. And they are well aware that, of the liability issues, the insurances they would need to carry and so forth. And that's all I have. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Ms. Byer. Any questions, Councilor Devine?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I guess a basic question is, what happens if someone goes into or fishes, or what's the punishment?
Do we have we addressed that? I have.
The city attorney, maybe?
Okay.
Madam City Attorney?
Our city code provides that there's a maximum $250 fine for violation of the provisions of this article.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for Ms. Byer? Thank you.
Thank you.
This is a first read item.
Madam Mayor, I'll move for first read on amendment of the regulation regarding entry into the into and watercraft on the city canal and Causey Pond.
Second.
All right, please cast your votes.
Motion passes 6-0.
All righty. Thank you all for your work on this. I'll call on Mr. Baruti for his update.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a couple quick highlights. I do want to thank publicly the Potomac Nationals and the ownership for being with us. Several weeks ago, we were at Dorothy Hart. We had about 150 or so folks show up. We do want to hear from the community, continue to hear from the community, so please see fredericksburgbaseball.com and offer public commentary there. We're capturing that information. We'll share it with council in the coming months. Also, I'll highlight the fact that our planning department is actively working on the next small area plan, Area 7, which is downtown. They're, as we speak, at the Planters Bank Building at 1001 Princess Anne Street. They're there tonight, probably wrapping up by 9 p.m. They'll also be back at that same location October 8th through 12th for a 5-day charrette. We'll put out more information about that as that date gets closer. I'll also remind folks that we are still gathering comments from folks for the Riverfront Park. Those wrap up tomorrow, September 12th, so please weigh in on the Riverfront Park. We're happy to gather those comments as well. Also highlight the fact that we've got a fall household hazardous and electronics collection that'll be at City Shop. So that's an opportunity, obviously, for folks to bring hazardous materials out of their homes and to the appropriate place. Again, City Shop parking lot. That'll be held on Saturday, September 22nd, again at City Shop from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. The fall activity catalog is out for Parks and Rec. I'll bring folks' attention to that. You can pick up a hard copy at the Dorothy Hart Community Center. A lot of offerings for the next several months through Parks and Rec. Parks and Rec, you can always find something to do with those folks. They're also highlighting in this city manager's report the fact that we've got free play at Dixon Park. That's been a conversation recently that was surprising to me that more folks didn't know about that. So we're trying to do a better job in telling the community that there is indeed free play at Dixon Park. You'll just have to follow signs. Today, it's you come into the park and it's off to your right beyond the pool. You'll see a sign again for free play. So folks don't have to be part of an organized team to play at Dixon Park. Lastly, I'll just thank Parks and Rec again for their cooperation in upgrading the love sign and their coordination with various city agencies to coordinate Veterans Day procession down William Street. More information will be posted on that as that event comes to our city on November 11th. So stay tuned for that. With that, Madam Mayor, happy to answer any questions and also highlight the fact that your calendar is now before you.
All right. Council Fry?
Thank you. Just wanted to say real quick to our in-house leadership with the city manager, assistant city manager, and all the staff that work on all of these public opportunities. I think it's very beneficial. Everything that we work on in the city, there's an after effect of meetings. For instance, the slave block, anything with baseball that's going on. Because we need those comments, but I want to say that the city goes, I feel, like an extra mile to open up the door for input with different types of meetings and so on and so forth. So I just want to add to everything that you just said that it's a big deal. So it's kind of like one of those situations, if you didn't get involved, it's kind of your fault because the door is open at all times for input, and we look for those comments. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Fry. That's absolutely true. Councilor Devine?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to see if we could remind folks maybe on our city website and Facebook page about the Fredericksburg Alert System. You know, as Hurricane Florence and other, winter-related things are coming up, if people have changed their email or changed their address or thing, it's just important to stay in touch with what's going on. So if people are not signed up or need to update their information, it would be a good time to remind people. Thank you.
Excellent. All right, well, if there's nothing more to come before this body, we are adjourned.